sound good to me? Can you hear me?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Mental Health Colorado's 38th Annual Tribute Gala will begin in 10 minutes. Grab your refreshments, get comfortable. We will get started in 10 minutes. Thank you for joining us. Mental Health Colorado's 38th Annual Tribute Gala will begin in 5 minutes. Thank you for being here. Everybody, thank you for joining us for Mental Health Colorado's 38th Annual Tribute Gala. Now, we have a very exciting program for you this evening, and tonight we'll be celebrating stories of hope, courage, and recovery, and we'll pay tribute to those who are making a difference for mental health in our communities. So I'm Reggie Rivers. I'm a former running back for the Denver Broncos. I'm president of the Gala team, and I'm happy to be your host this evening. It's really an honor to be here tonight supporting Mental Health Colorado's mission of promoting mental health. Now, if you haven't already registered, please do so now so you can participate in the silent auction and donate during the paddle raiser. Registration is super easy. Just text MHC20 to 76278. Again, MHC20 to 76278. Please get registered so you can be part of our effort tonight. All right, we are kicking things off this evening with some very special stories, and it's my honor to welcome our 3 spotlight speakers.
At 7 years young, my first memory is of my dad yelling and screaming. When my parents divorced and my abusive father left, my mom became a single mother of 3 boys, and we lived on welfare and low-income housing. My father continued to threaten me and my siblings. This was when my trouble with the law began. I had consistent nightmares, anxiety, and hypervigilance. I started drinking and doing drugs. I left the house when I was 17 because I was being abused and went out into the world with 0 coping skills. I shoplifted, vandalized, and committed burglary. I was kicked out of school, but I got my GED. I got involved in gang violence, where I was shot at and witnessed a murder. My best friend took his own life, and I was a pallbearer at his funeral. No matter how hard I tried, nowhere was safe from violence and trauma. My drinking and substance use got much, much worse. Our family dysfunction was severe, and in 1996, my brother took his life. My first wife battled cancer for 5 years, and I quit both of my jobs to become her full-time caregiver. In 2010, 3 days before Christmas, she died in my arms. I had been drinking my whole life up to that point to numb the pain. After she passed, I was in my darkest spot, and I attempted to take my own life. The next morning, a friend came to check on me, and I don't know how I woke up, but that was my turning point. After everything happened, I wasn't sleeping well. I was hypervigilant, I wouldn't go anywhere, and I had massive bouts of depression. Panic attacks came on quick. I met my current wife, and she encouraged me to talk to someone. My therapist suggested I go to a PTSD class. Suddenly, everything made so much sense. I was diagnosed with traumatic stress syndrome, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, major depressive disorder, and generalized anxiety disorder. I learned about adverse childhood experiences, recognized my symptoms as symptoms, found a medication that worked well for me, and went through EMDR therapy, which ended my nightmares. I still have symptoms, but they come and go, and they're not as bad as they used to be. I have been sober for 10 years now, and I wouldn't live any other way. I have no desire to numb myself. I know that men don't talk about their mental health, and I am committed to changing that. I have to talk about it so I can finally heal. I'm still here fighting, managing, and thriving.
4 years ago, my 14-year-old self could have never imagined that I would live to see my 18th birthday or my high school graduation. My journey was triggered by accumulation of many traumatic circumstances. This provoked a lack of control in my life that caused me to do anything to cope to numb myself. I hit rock bottom in 8th grade, weighing a total of 78 pounds, a mere skeleton amongst my peers. I was placed on a 72-hour mental health hold. I spent 9 days in a psychiatric hospital and 6 weeks in an eating disorders unit. During this time, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and anorexia nervosa. My life was consumed by mental illness. Throughout the last 4 years, I struggled with getting a grip on my mental health issues. I didn't see a point in trying to live a meaningful life. I didn't see a point in trying to recover. I lied to my friends and my family, my teachers, and my therapist. This ruthless cycle continued until I finally took the leap to speak up about my sexual assault. I was diagnosed with PTSD, I began seeing a trauma therapist, and I started making healthy friendships. I created relationships with my teachers, which allowed me to excel in school. I was finally beginning to feel like I had a hold on my mental health issues, and with that, I allowed myself to share my story with others after a realization. I'm not the only person who struggles with mental health issues. Sharing my story has allowed me to connect with others more than I realized, and it's inspired others to share their own story. 4 years later, I am alive, 18 years old, and graduated from high school. I've chosen recovery instead of continuing to allow my mental illnesses to control my life.
I've watched waves of doubt crash on the shores of my insecurities, then rush back into an ocean of despair as though trying to outrun every burden I tried tossing into the sea. Meanwhile, currents of confusion swept away my joy as I let my identity drown in a whirlpool of wishes and wants that never seemed to surface. And as every desire found its fate at the bottom of a drain, I found myself the captain of a ship that I no longer knew how to steer. And as the winds of success seemed to turn the other direction, I began to see an iceberg of anxiety forming in the distance. But as I approached, I realized that there was way more beneath the surface than I would ever allow you to see, because I am a man. I am a leader. I am strong, except when I am not. And many times, I was not. I made liars out of loved ones who said that they believed in me, because that would have meant that they could do something even I couldn't. But as I've walked this journey, fighting common foes known as depression, anxiety, anger, fear, I've learned that I may never outrun nor run out of my problems, but I've also learned that my faith and family give me the strength to run through them. And I've yet to reach perfection, but I have found rest in progression, as I've learned to mitigate the myths of my masculinity and maturity, as I've learned that my manhood and my emotions are not mutually exclusive, and neither are my Christianity and counseling. And in fact, the best way for me to lead, to love, to be a man, is to allow myself to grow with others who will walk with me through the hurt and the happiness and love me for all of who I am.
Wow, thank you so much, Raymond, Haley, and Isaiah. We appreciate your courage and your leadership in sharing your stories. You know, by sharing, you help end the shame and the discrimination that is so wrongly associated with mental health. You also empower yourselves and you help heal others around you. Now, you might never know who needed to hear your words and feel your courage tonight. So we appreciate your generosity in sharing. All right, one other reminder for all of you: if you haven't yet registered, please take out your phones and do so now. You can participate in the silent auction and the paddle raiser. You can text MHC20 to 76278. Again, that's text MHC20 to 76278. So we have some exciting auction packages, including an array of gift cards and hotel stays, a golf package. We've got some great premium auction items, including a Breckenridge getaway, a stay in Lake Tahoe, and a stay in Puerto Vallarta. And the man that you see over here, I get to introduce here in just a moment, Mr. Vincent Atchity. But all of that's available on our silent auction. It will close at 9 p.m. Mountain Time. Okay, so now it is my privilege to welcome aboard the president and CEO of Mental Health Colorado, Dr. Vincent Atchity. How are you, my friend?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good. It's good to see you tonight.
Thanks so much for being here with us in 3 dimensions.
Yes.
And thank you for being with us in 2 dimensions, everybody out there. It's nice to have gathered you all together, including my family in California, all 4 parents and my sister Rosemary, my cousin Adam in Indiana, and so many other friends and partners. Welcome, all of you, and thank you for joining us for our 38th annual Tribute Gala. And today is World Mental Health Day. In the midst of this global pandemic, we're all facing many uncertainties. But what is certain is that all Coloradans now have a much better understanding of the vital ways in which our mental health and our physical health are connected. Nothing like a highly infectious virus without a reliable treatment or a vaccine to drive stress, anxiety, and depression through the roof. Thanks to the impact of the pandemic on the economy, these are challenging times for nonprofit advocacy organizations, as they are for many individuals and industries. But with your help tonight, the pandemic won't keep Mental Health Colorado from working toward a strong start for all of Colorado's children, disentangling mental health and criminal justice, and ensuring all Coloradans can access affordable mental health or substance use care. I want to give special thanks to our co-chairs for the evening, Vic and Amy Mitchell. We have a quick message from our co-chairs, So now I'll turn it over to Vic and Amy.
Welcome to the Mental Health Colorado 38th Tribute Gala. We're so proud to be a sponsor of this such important event, to help pass important legislation to help so many people suffering with mental health. Please join us.
And thank you again for everyone for taking the time tonight to spend the hour with us, and hopefully everyone will be able to give generously and to bid on the great auction items that we have for you all to look at. Enjoy.
Thank you to Amy and Vic Mitchell. We appreciate all that you have done to make this evening possible. We're so grateful to members of our board of directors and our honorary board of former directors who are with us this evening. I especially want to recognize and thank two board members who are approaching the end of their last year on the board, who have both generously given years of immeasurably valuable service to Mental Health Colorado and to the well-being of all Coloradans. Our board chair, Aaron Hyatt, and Chair Emeritus, Chuck Ryman. Thank you, Aaron and Chuck, for your service and commitment, and also for the guidance and support you've given me during my first year with the organization. We're so grateful to you both for these past years and look forward to our continued work together as Aaron assumes the role of Chair Emeritus and Chuck continues to support our communications work as a member of the Honorary Board. We know that we'll be able to count on your continued partnership. Now, changing gears here, as you may know, jails and prisons have become the largest mental health facilities in the U.S. due to our nation's grave failures to support mental wellness across the lifespan. Earlier this year, the Equitas Project became a part of Mental Health Colorado, thanks to the generosity of the David and Laura Mirage Foundation. This transition will allow the work already done by Equitas to continue, now with Mental Health Colorado leading national advocacy for disentangling mental health and criminal justice. Tonight, Mental Health Colorado honors and recognizes Colorado leaders and communities who are beginning to offer a health care response for health needs instead of use of force, arrests, and criminalization. Jails and prisons are not the answer. A number of Colorado's communities have begun to take significant steps toward ending shame and discrimination and offer professional resources and safety measures for our most vulnerable Coloradans, first responders, and clinicians. Communities of Larimer, Douglas, Denver, Boulder, El Paso, Summit, and others are responding to the urgency of providing care, not cuffs. The mental health needs of Coloradans are dire. Our state consistently ranks in the bottom third of the nation in terms of the magnitude of our health needs and the difficulties we too often face in accessing quality care. More than half of the Coloradans who need care never get it. We have one of the highest suicide rates in the country. We know that the consumers for whom Mental Health Colorado has advocated since our founding in 1953 will be feeling the consequences of this pandemic more painfully than others, making our advocacy work all the more important. In pursuing healthier minds across the lifespan for all Coloradans, we advocate for families like the Kabir family. Carolyn Kabir is a pediatrician, a mental health advocate, and most importantly, a mother to Jacob and his siblings. Carolyn and Jacob are on the other side of a long journey. They've shared their story with us, and tonight we have the honor of sharing it with you.
After 8 weeks of bed rest, 3 hours of pushing, and a minute away from a cesarean delivery, I gave birth to Jacob. I cried tears of joy, filled with gratitude, for on that day, Jacob made me a mother. And on that day, I made him a promise that I would love, guide, and protect him until he was ready to take flight. As a boy, Jacob was creative, passionate, and innovative. But he was also temperamental in a way that didn't track with his peers. He had a hard time controlling his emotions, he was sensitive to loud noises, and he was inflexible with transitions. Other kids didn't understand him, and he didn't know how to express what he was feeling. At that time, in the early 2000s, we didn't understand what was going on with Jacob. Our family needed help and didn't know where to look. Despite the fact that I'm a pediatrician, it took several years before I could find anyone to identify what was happening with Jacob. Eventually, teachers at his primary school suspected that he might have Asperger's syndrome, and later, his doctors also diagnosed him with a mood disorder. I was grateful to finally define Jacob's struggles, but just because we had a name for it didn't mean everyone in our family accepted it. The fights, sometimes physical, between Jacob and his dad forever changed our family. Jacob's dad and I divorced. Jacob took it especially hard, falling into a deep depression. Jacob is smart, and his talent for learning foreign languages surfaced early, but the language of social connection, that did not come so easily. He struggled to make friends, but didn't know why. In his teen years, the resulting loneliness often triggered recurrent periods of depression. When Jacob transitioned to high school, students bullied him for being different. He felt alone and hurt and became suicidal. I tried to get him help at the hospital where I worked, but their psychiatric inpatient beds were full. We tried intensive group therapy, but Jacob didn't fit in with the other kids or the tight parameters of the program. One night, when Jacob was 15, he overheard me on the phone discussing boarding school as an option for him. His emotions escalated quickly. Unable to control his fear, he had a meltdown and physically lashed out at me. When the police arrived, I thought they would call for health care, but instead, they placed Jacob in handcuffs. They took him to a juvenile detention center, and he was barred from our home for 6 months. What had been a mental health crisis had suddenly turned my son into a criminal. The system had failed us. We struggled to access care that could help Jacob manage his emotions. The stigma of both autism and mental health kept us from making connections with people who could support us. And the lack of appropriate response to a mental health emergency meant my son spent more time talking to probation officers than to the therapists he desperately needed to see. I wondered if my smart, talented boy would ever get the fair chance he deserved. We are not a family that gives up, and I would never give up on my son. In Jacob's late teens, things started to change. His brain further developed and he matured. He learned how to better manage his emotions. A year after high school, he landed a job at Starbucks, where his manager patiently taught Jacob the skills he needed to succeed, and the other employees embraced him. They've become some of his closest friends. 2 years after high school, he's off to attend New Mexico State University to study wildlife conservation. Jacob has finally figured out how to stand in his power. He is taking flight, and it is the greatest joy of my life to watch him do it. On the 16th floor of an office building in Denver, a group of people are talking about us, about how Jacob almost didn't make it because we couldn't get the care we needed. They wonder how it must have felt to be so alone, without any support. They talk about the countless incidents when calls for assistance with a health need lead to handcuffs and tragedy. Then they talk about change. In 2020, Mental Health Colorado championed more than 20 bills to improve access to care, decriminalize mental health, provide a strong start for all of Colorado's children, and end shame and discrimination. They will continue to fight for all Coloradans like Jacob, his siblings, and me, until families no longer have to face the challenges we once did. For more than 65 years, Mental Health Colorado has led the fight for creating healthier minds across the lifespan. Be part of that change today.
Well, we are grateful to the Kabir family for sharing their story, and what a tragic situation that they found themselves in. But we're very grateful that Jacob was finally able to get the care that he needed. All right, so families like theirs are the reason that we're here tonight. They need our support. We appreciate your commitment, all of you at home, in supporting this important work. Now, we've reached the time in our program during which we can all get involved. Alone, any one of us can only do so much, but together as a team, we can make a big difference for Mental Health Colorado and the families they serve. It's time for our paddle raiser. So we're going to ask for donations at different levels, and we hope that you'll donate at least once tonight when you hear a level that matches your means and matches your commitment to this organization. One more quick reminder, if you haven't yet registered, please do that now. It's super easy. Just text MHC20 to 76278. Again, text MHC20 to 76278. All right, so we are going to start off our paddle raiser by asking if you'd like to donate $10,000. And I know that $10,000 is a lot of money. It's also a lot of impact on a lot of families. And I have on my iPad here, I can see we already have a couple of $10,000 gifts in. So I want to say thank you to Aaron and Naya Hyatt for your $10,000 gift. Thank you to David and Debbie Youngren for your $10,000 gift. We appreciate your generosity and support. And Vincent, I want to throw this to you, and I know that mental health needs of children is an important part of what you guys do. What would $10,000 mean for your organization?
Yeah, your donation tonight will help meet kids' health needs and help them reach their potential. The best way to support healthier minds across the lifespan for all Coloradans is to invest in a strong start for all children. Mental Health Colorado is providing guidance to over 1,000 schools and plans to reach every district in the state by 2021. We're also getting teachers the training they need to recognize mental health concerns in their students and to be able to refer them to appropriate care and supports.
Yeah, that's wonderful, and we have a couple of more donors at $10,000 here. We have Patty and Don Cook. Thank you so much for your $10,000 gift. And actually, we have Maureen and Kip Duran at $8,500. Thank you for your generosity. If there anyone else who wants to join in at the $10,000 level, please make your contribution now. If you have not yet registered, you can easily do so by texting the phrase MHC20 to the number 76278 and become a part of this. So we're going to move down one level here to $5,000, and I want to recognize that we have Amy and Vic Mitchell at $5,000, and we have another anonymous gift at $5,000 as well. Thank you for your generosity with that. Vincent, you and I have spoken before, and you say housing is such an important part of mental health. What would $5,000 mean for your organization?
Yeah, $5,000 means so much in terms of helping to improve access to housing and health care. Timely access to care saves lives. When you're fighting addiction, depression, or suicidal thoughts, you should easily be able to find the quality care that you need, and you shouldn't have to struggle to figure out how to pay for it. Mental Health Colorado has been prioritizing veterans' mental health, and we've been working to create permanent supportive housing for veterans with mental health needs. We championed a bill that expands housing and services for people who are homeless and have a substance use condition. When it comes to mental wellness, housing is first and foremost. Having a safe, stable place to call home is the most essential ingredient for wellness.
Yeah, and I think it's easy for us who have safe homes to take that for granted, but it is such an essential ingredient. And so we have Vanita Curry at $5,000. Thank you so much. And you know what? Amy and Vic Mitchell, I want to thank you for your $5,000 gift, but I see here in the notes it's actually a $6,000 gift. So thank you for your generous donation. We appreciate that. Okay, we're going to move down another level to $2,500. And $2,500, you have talked several times about the Care Not Cuffs part of Mental Health Colorado. What does $2,500 mean?
Yeah, your donation tonight will help us continue to prioritize Care Not Cuffs, which is health care for health crises. You know, as you've just heard from the Kabir family, a mental health crisis deserves the same health care response that you get for a physical emergency like a stroke or a heart attack. Jacob's mom called for help thinking Jacob would get the health care he needed during his mental health crisis. But instead, he was handcuffed, put in the back of a police car, and taken to a juvenile detention center for 6 months. We're working to demand a better response for our families and communities. When we call for help, we should get help, not harm. Care, not cuffs.
I think that is so good and is so important. And take a look at our leaderboard. We are at $107,000 raised so far. At $2,500, I want to recognize Margaret Roth, Sarah and Craig Everson. Thank you for your $2,500 gifts. I want to say thank you to Bill Saslow, to Jim and Edie Hooten, and Doug and Laurel Muir. And actually, I've got to correct myself because they didn't donate $2,500. Sarah and Craig Everson actually donated $3,000. Bill Saslow donated $3,000. Jim and Edie Hooten donated $3,500. And Doug and Laurel Muir donated $3,000. So thank you for your generous support of Mental Health Colorado. And as you can see from that running total, we are making progress, and you can be part of the team that is going to help Mental Health Colorado continue to serve the families that they serve. All right, we're going to move down another level to $1,000, and we're starting to get into the terrain where more of us can get involved to help with these solutions. At $1,000, we already have Charles and Barbara Raymond. We have Robin Loop. So please keep those donations coming. And I want to, you talk about with an election coming up, you talk a lot about having mental health on every ballot. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the most optimistic things we may have going right now is that mental health is not a partisan issue. Parties on all sides, all people understand this. And in this historical election season, in particular, we've been working hard to educate all Colorado voters and candidates so that we have leaders who will guide us in the right direction when it comes to mental health. We consult with the candidates to make sure that they're committed to supporting the mental health of the population they seek to represent, regardless of the party that is supporting them.
That's wonderful. All right, at $1,000, we've got some supporters here. We have Judy Amabile, or Amabile. I apologize if I've mispronounced your name. We have Gertrude Grant. We have Steve and Amy Volan. Thank you all for your gifts at $1,000. Is there anyone else who'd like to donate $1,000 to Mental Health Colorado? It's easy to do. All you have to do is log in and make your contribution. If you have not yet registered, just text the phrase MHC, that's Mental Health Colorado, MHC20 to 76278, and you can contribute to this. All right, as we move down another level to $500, we have a special opportunity right now. We have an anonymous donor who has put up $5,000 to match the first 500 people who the first 10 people who donated $500. So please join us and make a contribution of $500 to help us earn this match. You know, in this climate, we're talking about aging and we're talking about senior care. How is that impacted by the services of Mental Health Colorado?
Well, it's the other end of that lifespan, and strong start from for all children, but ending with wellness and aging. And what we know is that isolation and loneliness are main causes of depression and anxiety as we age. Now more than ever, caregivers are overburdened and overwhelmed, and quality support is hard to find. No one should have to head toward the end of life in a heightened state of anxiety about stability of housing, health care, or community. We're working to ensure that all Coloradans can experience wellness and aging.
Oh, that is so important, and we appreciate all of you have answered this call. Let's tote up our leaderboard again and see where we are in our total fundraising. We're at $107,000, but we have $500 gifts from Nancy Alterman, Aaron Silver, Mitch Birdie, Rick Sterling, Scott Nielsen, Dan Stewart, and Ben and Amy Miller. That's 7 people at $500. Are there 3 more people out there who would join in to help this mission, to help us make this $5,000 match? 3 more people who would donate $500 to Mental Health Colorado. Please make your donations now and help us keep advancing the mission of this wonderful organization. Okay, we're going to step down another level to $250, and we have a match at this level too. It is the same generous, anonymous donor who's put up $2,500 to match the first 10 people at $250. So please make your $250 contributions now. And I want to ask you, Doctor, you just talked about the far end of the spectrum with the aging population. Now we talk about the beginning of this with expectant parents and new parents. What does a $250 gift mean for Mental Health Colorado?
Well, it's just the most important place for us to invest our time and effort. We know that children thrive when their parents are sustainably housed and employed. Every investment in support for families yields valuable returns in the long-term health of children and young people. We helped pass House Bill 1193, a bill that expands support for high-risk pregnant women with substance use conditions before birth and postpartum. We're promoting greater understanding among Colorado's leaders that paid family leave, universal access to early child care, and a living wage are essential building blocks for healthy children, healthy communities, and thriving economies.
That's wonderful. Okay, so I want to mention Aaron Hyatt made a gift at $2,500, and I don't know if I recognized you back then. Aaron, thank you so much for your generosity. At $250, we have Kelly Causey, Peggy and Don Brown, Sandra Rhodes, Michelle Barnes, Elizabeth Hickman, Sue Renner, Kathleen Dillon, and Sue Renner again, making another contribution. We appreciate the way that you're playing this game, Sue. Everyone should make 2 donations tonight. All right, we're at $108,000 raised so far. Let's keep this number growing. We're going to move down to our final level tonight, which is $100. And Vincent, for $100, this is something you and I were talking earlier about, the shame and discrimination of mental health. And I was talking about my time in the NFL. We're in the NFL. We as players, we're reluctant to admit that our knee hurts, let alone that our head hurts or our hearts hurt or that our feelings are hurt or that we're nervous or we're scared. How important is it, this whole mission, to just reduce the shame and the discrimination that's part of mental health?
It's one of the most important things we're doing that we all have a role to play in. Just as we all have physical health needs over the course of our lives, we all experience mental health needs. None of us is immune to mental health or substance use concerns, and we should never have to feel ashamed of the state of our mental health. Your donation will help us end shame and discrimination by allowing us to share and promote stories of Coloradans who have lived these kinds of experiences. With your help, we will turn up the volume on the priority of mental wellness for all.
We have a lot of people at $100 here. We've got Ruben and Victoria Nunez. We have Melissa Patron Zavaris. We have Larry Spivak, Martha Canop, Sandy Gutierrez, Bob Leob, Connie Rule, Sheila Welsh, Heather Beadle, Katie Simons, Sally Gomez, Mark Simmons, Sarah Dahlia, Glenn Most a second time. Thank you, Glenn. Colin Stone and Aaron Hyatt again. Thank you so much for all of your generous support. And so if you haven't yet made a contribution, we invite you to do so. Please, if you haven't yet made a contribution, make it here at the $100 level and become part of this team at Mental Health Colorado that is changing the fate and the path for so many families. If you have already made a gift, I want to invite you to make one more at $100 and just do a $100 tag on the end of it. Again, let me remind you that if you haven't yet registered, you can text MHC20 to 76278. Again, MHC20 to 76278. All right, so thank you all for your support of Colorado, or Mental Health Colorado tonight. We're not done. You can continue to make contributions, but you are all truly champions for mental health. So I want to mention that there's another mental health champion who is making a difference. It is Patrick Kennedy, the former congressman from Rhode Island. He's done fantastic work, and I had a chance to talk to him about some landmark mental health work that he's done. Here's a look at that conversation. Well, I am honored now to introduce former U.S. Representative Patrick Kennedy. He was in Congress for 16 years representing Rhode Island. How are you, my friend?
Great. Thanks, Reggie. Great to be with you.
Hey, thank you. Well, you are best known as the lead sponsor for the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act. Tell us about the process of getting that started and why that was so important to you.
Thank you, Reggie. Well, the parity law, known as the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act, is kind of the equivalent of our version of Brown v. Board of Education, in the sense that it says we can no longer have separate and think that it's equal. Separate is unequal, and what we've done with the mental health world is we've carved it out, and we think it's kind of an add-on to healthcare as opposed to essential to healthcare. And what we did with the parity law is we made it about discrimination. So, we're always fighting bias and prejudice, but like the civil rights fights, we've never gotten over, obviously, racism, systemic racism, and prejudice. We're seeing that obviously come to fruition again in our nation's consciousness. But what made a difference is when we passed the '64 Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act of '65, fair housing, fair employment, we moved that bar up and said we have to treat by law everybody equally in this country. We set a new normal. And what the parity law is seeking to do is require payers to treat mental illnesses and addictions in the same way they do other chronic illnesses, and that they impose no higher copays, deductibles, premiums, or lower lifetime caps when covering mental illnesses and addictions, and they cover them inpatient, in-network, outpatient, in-network, inpatient, out-of-network, outpatient, out-of-network, pharmacy, and ER, and they cover the same primary, secondary, and tertiary levels of care. Now, that's all a mouthful, but the reason I say all of that, Reggie, is to say we wrote in a very detailed way how the law should be followed, where insurance companies reimburse and pay for these chronic illnesses in the same way they would cancer and cardiovascular disease and diabetes and the like.
That's wonderful. And when you explain it, it makes perfect sense. Why should this be treated differently? So now the Kennedy Forum, tell us about the work you're doing there and how you're moving things forward.
Thank you. Well, we started the Kennedy Forum on the 50th anniversary of President Kennedy's signing of the 1963 Community Mental Health Act. And when he signed that bill, he said people with mental illness, quote, need no longer be alien to our affections or beyond the help of our communities. And really, if you want an encapsulation of what our lodestar should be in mental health policy, it's that simple phrase that President Kennedy used to describe the value of the Community Mental Health Act. It wasn't beyond the help of our psychiatrists, beyond the help of our hospitals, beyond the help of our medications, although we need all of those. He said community, which means our education system, our criminal justice system, our housing system, our, going right down, job training. We need to incorporate overall treatment and wellness of the individual in the community so that we don't think we can silo people by their diagnoses and have them be able to survive. I'm a person in long-term recovery from addiction and mental illness, and for me, it's a physical allergy. It's a physical manifestation. It's a biological disease. I believe it's genetically big part of it's genetically inherited, and all the science tells you that. It's a mental obsession, to use and self-medicate, and it's a spiritual malady, because part of the disease wants you to isolate and not be connected with friends and family. So it needs to be a holistic solution. I'm blessed. I have those types of wraparounds for me, but if you don't have those wraparounds in any comprehensive plan, you're never going to allow people to gain the recovery that is possible through the proper interventions.
And I think it's so interesting, and Well, Lisa, my next question, that you talk about your own addiction and your own problems, and your New York Times bestseller talked about this code of silence, the shame and that goes along with mental illness. And coming out of the NFL, I can testify that, that shame is nobody wants to admit that they're hurt. Nobody wants to admit that they're having problems. Tell us about the work that you're doing to reduce that code of silence.
So I had the honor of rededicating Fort Bragg Special Warfare Center, and it was because it's named after my uncle. And when I went to the dedication ceremony, the general there said, "Patrick, we have more mental health for our Green Berets than any other branch of the service." And I shook my head. I said, "I know you read my CV, and it says that I'm a mental health champion, but these Green Berets don't need mental health. I mean, they jump out of airplanes and then they swim underwater without breathing for 5 miles, and they hit the beach. They're speaking 6 languages. They take out their target and they're reading to their kids by dinner time. I mean, these people, of all people, don't need mental health." And he said, "You're wrong." And I said, "What?" He said, "We look at mental health as a force multiplier." And that's the way the military thinks about this. Now, I wish society thought about mental health as a force multiplier, because all of us want to, in the Army terminology, be the best we can be. And this is not simply about addressing the very real needs of people with serious mental illness and those who are disabled by their depression and anxiety and other forms of mental illness and addiction. It's about helping everyone not have to wait until they're very sick before they get treatment. And one of the things that keeps them from getting treatment earlier is this stigma, the self-shame that people place on themselves. And that's because you grow up in a family where, quote, "we don't talk about these issues." And that happened to me and my family. We were a very public family, obviously. And the thought was, if anybody knew that we had problems like everyone else, we might be subject to more attacks politically. And that's the reason why, I kept quiet. I always thought that our problems were our own. As I wrote in my book, I said, until I went to the bookstore and I started reading about all the, quote, secrets in my family that I thought I was keeping on behalf of everybody. And I realized they had already written about them in these books. So why was I feeling so shamed by this? I was only hurting myself, because as they say in recovery, you're only as sick as your secrets. And I kept thinking, these are secrets I can't tell anyone.
Wow. Well, that's great. And Patrick, final question is, what's the update on how things are going with your federal work on parity?
So we have set up, and I hope people go to the kennedyforum.org, because they'll get a lot of information. I can't have time to really go through, but we have a parity registry, which people can sign up if they feel like they've been discriminated against. We also tell people how to file an appeal, make it very easy for them. We also try to create like an NAACP of mental health, where we kind of sue insurance companies based upon where the best cases are and where the most number of denials take place that are similar in nature and point to a systemic bias in that insurance company when determining medical necessity for people. We've recently seen in California a case called Witt versus United, where United was found to be guilty of cooking up their own medical necessity determination criteria, which basically meant that more and more people were denied care they would otherwise receive if they had been judged against what was known to best treat those conditions. So the idea of the Kennedy Forum is to get these kind of tools, and we have Parity Track, which works with the Millman company to show every state where they are on the statutory authority for parity, the regulatory authority for parity, and the case law authority for parity. And that way we can empower advocates to know to go to their insurance commissioners and their attorney generals and their governors and say, we expect you to follow the law and protect your constituents, because it's defrauding consumers when payers fail to pay for care that those consumers pay for when they buy their health insurance.
Wow. Well, I tell you what, you are doing tremendous work. We appreciate what you did while you were a member of the House of Representatives to get this legislation passed, and we appreciate that you continue to advance the fight for this. And I love the comparison to the Board of Education, the 1954 case, because I think you're right. Separate but equal is impossible. Separate is inherently unequal, and we appreciate you continuing this fight.
Well, I thank you, Reggie, for taking the lead. And I also thank Mental Health Colorado and everyone that's part of this organization, many of whom are old friends, for doing the work that they're doing. One thing we need more than anything else is we need political will and we need advocacy. And with that, we can change the laws, which will help to change attitudes. So keep up the great work out there.
Thank you. Patrick Kennedy, everybody. Oh, thank you again, Patrick. That was wonderful. And he used a phrase in there that I think is powerful for all of us, and that is force multiplier, that together we can make a big impact. And we had donations that continue to come in. Want to give another shout out to Larry Spivak. He donated $1,000, and then as if that wasn't good enough, he donated another $1,000. So thank you very much to Larry Spivak. At the $500 level, I want to recognize Mark Schumacher, and I think he might be related to you, Vincent. Is that right?
That's right. Mark's my father-in-law. Thank you, Mark.
That's very nice.
Well, hello, family. Yeah.
Yes, we appreciate the family. And, you know, earlier you recognized your family in California. Is that where you're from?
I'm from there. My wife is from Colorado. My wife, Lauren, our two boys are in two dimensions with us tonight. So
That's
glad to have you with us.
Well, so glad.
As well as my in-laws. So.
Yeah, that's wonderful. We're glad that your family has joined in. And, you know, at the $250 level, we have, I can't see, I think I said Sue Renner earlier, but Lisa Brown, John Cook, Ken Atchity, I think you might know him, Chris Otto, Heidi Bodie, Hope Hyatt, Lauren Atchity. Is that your wife?
It is.
Okay, yes. The Atchity family is busy. Doug Hanish. Also at $500, we had, I said Mark Schumacher, thank you. Okay, and finally at the $100 level, I want to recognize a few more people. Colin Stone, Aaron Hyatt, again, he's all over this thing. Jason Wick, Sierra Kunzler, Daniel Darting, Bobby and Ron Morrow, David McLaughlin, and Frank Cornelia. Let's throw up our leaderboard one more time, please. Before we go tonight, we're at $112,000. Thank you for your generous donations tonight. And it's not too late to make a contribution. As you see down there at the bottom, if you want to register and want to make a gift, text MHC20 to 76278. Text MHC20 to 76278. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of our program. Don't forget the silent auction will close at 9 p.m. Mountain Time, so get your final bids in. Thank you so much for being here to support. There is no health without mental health, and that's because of community leaders and supporters like you that Mental Health Colorado continues to thrive and continues to make a difference. If you want to learn more about Mental Health Colorado, please visit their website. You can sign up for email updates. You can do that at mentalhealthcolorado.org. All right, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for your commitment. We appreciate you. Have a good night.